The problem isn't the machine, I said. It's the person who told it to fail. That's how the meeting started, me correcting the boss in front of everyone. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making everything feel like interrogation instead of business. The hum of the HVAC mixed with the faint clang of steel from the plant floor below. I'd been called up to conference room B for what Ethan Cole, my supervisor, called a strategic conversation. I'd fixed his mistakes more times than I could count, so strategy sounded like another way of saying blame. My name's Rex Halvorsen, 52 years old, senior maintenance engineer at Phoenix Alloy Fabrication, 25 years in this plant. I started here when most of the current management were still trying to figure out dial-up internet. I kept the furnaces running through 3 ownership changes, 6 safety audits, 2 recessions, and 1 explosion that nearly shut us down for good. I wasn't the kind of guy who needed plaques or pizza parties. I just wanted things to work. Ethan leaned against the conference table like a man posing for his own success story. Pressed shirt, no grease under his nails, the kind of smile that came free with an MBA. Beside him stood a kid barely older than my daughter Zach. Something thin tie, smartwatch blinking every few seconds like it was waiting for instructions. He was holding a clipboard he didn't need. Ethan folded his arms. "Rex, you've been with us a long time," he started. That fake gentle tone bosses use right before they stab you. "You've done great work here. Nobody's denying that. But the company's evolving. We're in a new digital age now. Automation, cloud integration, predictive systems. You're, He chuckled and looked at the HR woman sitting near the door. "You're kind of like Windows 95 inches, a cloud world." She laughed. Zach did too. I didn't. I looked at him and waited, hoping he'd realize the weight of what he'd just said. But he didn't. He just kept smiling that corporate smile, convinced he was making a clever metaphor instead of gutting a man who'd given half his life to this place. "Windows 95, huh?" I said finally. "That operating system built everything you're running now. Without it, your cloud would fall out of the sky." Ethan's smile thinned. "That's exactly why we're bringing in Zach here," he said. "Fresh eyes, fresh energy. He'll be shadowing you for the next couple weeks. You can show him the ropes." I stared at the kid. His handshake was soft, his eyes darting between me and Ethan, like he was checking if he was allowed to speak. "When do I start training him?" I asked. Ethan grinned. "You already have." Something shifted inside me, subtle but definite. The same feeling I'd get when a voltage regulator hummed wrong, a low vibration of warning. I kept my face neutral. Years of working around molten steel teaches you not to flinch. Anger makes you sloppy. Sloppy gets you burned. We wrapped up with polite phrases. "Thank you for your service. Best of luck in your transition." All the usual corporate condolences. My severance packet sat in a manila envelope like a death certificate. I walked the catwalk one last time before heading out. The plant stretched below me like a sleeping animal, steel veins, glowing furnaces, conveyor belts pulsing in rhythm. I'd built half of it with my own hands. Every hiss of steam, every flicker of the monitors. I knew what it meant. Those machines trusted me more than the people upstairs ever did. On the main floor, a few guys looked up as I passed, eyes full of the kind of sympathy that never turns into action. 1 or 2 gave a nod. Most looked away. Loyalty in a factory evaporates faster than coolant. I stopped at my locker, opened it, and stared at the same tools I'd been using for decades. Wrenches dulled from grip, a soldering iron wrapped in black tape, my old red toolbox with the dented corner from a fall off the mezzanine back in '09. I ran my hand over the lid, feeling the cold metal against my palm. Outside, the Arizona sun hit me like a blast furnace. My reflection in the truck window looked older than I remembered. More miles. Less map. I slid the toolbox into the passenger seat and climbed in. For a while, I just sat there, engine off, listening to the faint echo of the plant through the open bay doors. The machines would keep running for now, until someone forgot the small things, the sequences only I knew, the patches I'd written into the system's bones years ago. I started the truck, put it in gear, and watched the building shrink in the rearview mirror. Every system fails eventually. Some just need the right overload. A week without the plant felt like sensory withdrawal. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., expecting to hear the hydraulic press cycle or the compressor kick on, but the house stayed quiet, heavy with silence. I'd spent 25 years inside that noise. It had tuned my heartbeat. Now, without it, everything felt offbeat. I'd drive past Phoenix Alloy Fabrication just to see the smokestacks, the glow of the furnaces against the night. From the outside, it looked the same, but I knew better. Machines notice when the wrong hands start touching their insides. On the 8th day, my phone buzzed with a call from an old contact, Ferris Industrial Solutions, a contractor that serviced our secondary systems, ventilation, coolant flow, environmental sensors. The manager said they had a rush order for Phoenix Alloy. "You know the layout," he said. "In and out job. Pays better than sitting at home." I didn't hesitate. When I got the work order, I saw the digital signature at the bottom, Ethan Cole. I smiled. He'd approved the contractor requisition, without realizing he'd just signed my re-entry ticket. By Monday morning, I had a visitor badge and a fresh set of coveralls. No one questioned it. No one ever questions a man with a clipboard and purpose. Stepping inside the plant again was like walking through a memory I hadn't finished dreaming. The air smelled of burnt metal and solvent. The lights flickered in that same nervous rhythm, and the hum of machinery vibrated through my boots. Every part of me knew where to step, where to listen, but this time, I wasn't part of it. I was a ghost. Most of the crew avoided eye contact. Some whispered. Others just kept their heads down, as if loyalty might be contagious. Then there was Zach, still in that clean uniform, still tapping on his smartwatch like it ran the plant instead of the men sweating under it. He gave me a half wave. I nodded back. Let him think we were equals. I moved through the corridors slowly, pretending to check ducting and flow meters, but I was taking inventory of something else entirely. The network monitors still blinked in the control room, running the same interface I'd built 10 years ago. Outdated firmware. No redundancy. Passwords taped to the underside of keyboards. Safety override codes scribbled in marker on a whiteboard. Ethan had modernized the management, not the systems. They'd built their new cloud empire on the bones I left behind, and the bones were starting to creak. In the main server bay, I saw the same rusted rack cabinet where I used to spend nights resetting routers and uploading patches. I remembered one of those nights clearly, 2 in the morning, a thunderstorm outside. A power surge had fried half the control grid, and the plant was dead in the water. I stayed until sunrise, soldering connections by flashlight, while Ethan slept through his first week as plant manager. He'd sent me a thank you email later. No raise, just gratitude in 12-point Arial. That was around the same time he'd asked me how to bypass a safety lockout for emergencies. I'd shown him the sequence. 3 lines of code. Simple, efficient, and dangerous if you knew where to look. Now, walking past that terminal, I realized I'd just found my own emergency exit. I documented everything. The corrupted backups, the unauthorized wireless nodes, the same router passwords used for 15 years. I built a mental map of every flaw Ethan ignored while he was busy learning management jargon. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. This entire system was running on my ghost. After lunch, I sat in the maintenance office pretending to review calibration logs. The new IT guy, barely 30, bragged about the automated reporting upgrade Ethan had commissioned. "Totally seamless now," he said. "All data routes through the central server. Old stuff's been wiped." I smiled. "All of it?" "Yeah. Even the legacy user accounts." He said it like a victory, but when he turned back to his screen, I accessed a diagnostic terminal on my tablet and entered a command string I hadn't used in years. The server pinged back instantly. ACCE. Granted. User R. Halverson. Root. They hadn't deleted a thing. I leaned back in the chair and let the hum of the plant surround me again. Every machine, every circuit, every automated process still carried my fingerprints. My credentials sat at the heart of their precious modernization, invisible and invulnerable. Ethan's name might be on the office door, but mine was written in the code. Obsolete software still runs the world. People just forget where the switches are. The calls started 3 days after my consulting job ended. First, it was Marco from the night shift, his voice low like he was confessing something. "Rex, you hear about the line shut down yesterday? Whole section of the forge went dark for 20 minutes. Zach said it was a legacy code issue. You didn't leave any bugs behind, did you?" I told him no, because I hadn't. At least not yet. Over the next week, more calls trickled in. Power spikes, production delays, safety sensors freezing mid-cycle. Every time something broke, Zach blamed old code. Ethan backed him up in meetings, apparently telling upper management that my outdated systems were the root of every glitch. They were rewriting history one press release at a time. I'd become the ghost they used to scare the investors' obsolete Rex, the relic who nearly ruined their new digital age. I didn't argue. I didn't have to. I was already watching. From home, I logged into diagnostic terminals they didn't know still existed. Ghost ports buried under layers of network architecture. I could see everything. Temperature readings, shift logs, security feeds. The plant pulsed on my screen like a heart monitor, every spike and drop translating to rhythm I knew better than my own pulse. It looked wrong. The timing was off. Compressors cycling too fast, coolant pumps overcompensating, error logs stacking like static. The whole system felt like a wounded animal bleeding quietly, while its handlers congratulated themselves. Friday night, I met Marco at a diner off I-17. Grease on the windows, pie that tasted like memory. He slid into the booth across from me and leaned in. "You won't believe this," he said. "Ethan just got a 25 grand bonus for cutting maintenance hours. Said the new system made half the old labor redundant." He smiled without humor. "Guess that's you." I stirred my coffee and did the math. 25 grand. That was about 3 years of my unpaid overtime. Nights. I stayed after hours patching broken drives because overtime approval wasn't in the budget. I remembered one of those nights vividly. The plant quiet, except for the hum of the generators, my hands black with grease, while Ethan sent an email about cost efficiency. When I got home, the house felt too still. The hum of the refrigerator reminded me of the plant's low drone. I booted up my laptop, fingers moving before my conscience could weigh in. I told myself I wasn't angry. I was curious, a professional assessing system stability. I opened the control interface, navigated to the main power grid, and ran a simple command. Simulate voltage fluctuation, 2% deviation, just enough to make the monitors flash and the system stutter. The effect was immediate. Cooling units spiked, alarms triggered, and within seconds the plant shifted into diagnostic mode. I pictured Zach scrambling, Ethan shouting orders he didn't understand. IT. Trying to reboot. I sat there in the dark, watching the chaos unfold through access logs and live feeds. It was intoxicating, like hearing an old engine roar back to life after years of silence. Then, just as quickly, the system stabilized. The backup grid kicked in, power normalized, and everything resumed like nothing had happened. Ethan's name appeared in the admin logs. He'd taken credit for the fix. By morning, I knew he'd be telling the executives how he personally handled a critical infrastructure threat. The humiliation hit harder than the insult in that conference room. They'd stolen my years, my work, and now they were stealing my failures too. I closed the laptop, but the glow of the screen lingered behind my eyes. For a long time, I just sat there, hands trembling, the faint echo of the plant's hum filling the silence. I told myself it was a test, a harmless experiment. But every test has a result, and failure always demands documentation. In the garage, I turned on the single hanging bulb. The air smelled of oil and dust. On the far wall, my old schematics were pinned up, yellowed paper curling at the edges. I started adding to them. Network diagrams, power grids, coolant lines, lines of red string stretched from corner to corner, connecting vulnerabilities only I knew existed. At some point, I realized what it looked like. Not maintenance, not nostalgia, a blueprint for execution. Maria called me just after midnight. Her voice was tight, clipped. The kind of tone people use when they're standing too close to something dangerous. Rex. I didn't know who else to call. The safety sensors on line 4 are throwing false readings again. Pressure levels are off, but Ethan's making us override the alarms to keep production moving. Says it's a calibration bug, but the numbers don't look like a bug. I could hear the background noise of the plant, the low roar of the furnaces, the metallic rhythm that had haunted my dreams since I left. He told me if I can't handle it, he'll find someone who can. She added quietly. Maria had been my apprentice for 6 years. Sharp mind, steady hands. She could read a circuit board like most people read a menu. I trained her myself, taught her how to listen to the machines, how to hear their language in the hums and rattles. If she was calling me now, it meant she'd already tried everything else. Shut it down, I said. If those sensors are off, you're playing with live fire. She hesitated. Ethan said he'll write me up if I do. I exhaled slowly, feeling that familiar vibration start again in my chest, the one that used to come right before something broke. Leave it to me, I said, and hung up. By 2 a.m., I was driving down the empty highway toward the plant. The desert night was black and starless, the kind that swallows light instead of reflecting it. I still had my contractor badge from the last job. No one had deactivated it. Typical. Systems are only as strong as the people running them. The guard at the gate barely looked up from his phone when I flashed it. Consulting work, I said. He waved me through. Inside, the corridors felt different at night. The usual heat and noise were replaced by a kind of hollow hum, like the building itself was holding its breath. Red exit signs glowed faintly through the haze, throwing dull reflections across the metal floors. My footsteps echoed as I walked past the assembly bays. Every machine I passed had a story. The old hydraulic press that almost took Marco's hand in '03. The coolant pumps I rebuilt after the explosion in '09. The control panel I'd wired myself when corporate refused to approve a new one. Each scar in the steel was a memory. In the control room, I set my toolbox on the table. To anyone else, it looked like a maintenance kit. To me, it was an altar. Inside were USB drives labeled with fake part numbers, diagnostic keys, and one folded piece of paper with a handwritten command sequence. My patch. Months of quiet design, disguised as performance optimization. I sat down at the console and logged in through the same root credentials they'd never removed. Access granted, no questions asked. As I worked, I spoke to the machines under my breath, the way I used to when things got rough. "You've done your job," I whispered. "You've bled enough for people who don't deserve you." My fingers moved on autopilot, running scripts that would appear to boost processing speed while embedding a series of triggers. Once live, the update would begin transmitting every falsified maintenance report, every safety override, every deleted sensor log, straight to corporate headquarters. Copies would go to federal regulators, local safety boards, even the Environmental Commission. Every lie Ethan had built his career on was about to surface. The patch would activate at dawn. It was timed, precise, impossible to stop without leaving digital fingerprints. And if Ethan tried to interfere, The system would lock down and broadcast a tampering alert to every administrator in the network. He'd have nowhere to hide. The final script loaded. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I thought about Maria, about the workers still down there, trusting alarms that no longer meant anything. I thought about the years I'd spent keeping those systems alive, while people like Ethan gutted them for profit. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Sometimes destruction isn't the goal, I said quietly. It's just the side effect of truth. The update installed in less than 60 seconds. No alarms, no fireworks, just the soft confirmation tone that sounded almost like a sigh. I packed the drives back into my toolbox, closed it, and walked out. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sky over the desert was bleeding pale gray, the first sign of sunrise cutting through the darkness. I didn't look back. The plant would wake soon, humming and grinding like it always did, unaware that its heartbeat had already changed. I didn't crash the system. I just removed the lies that kept it running. The next morning, the sky was the same bleached white it always was, over the desert, and the air tasted like burnt metal, even from miles away. From where I sat in my truck, parked just off the access road, I could see the plant waking up workers, filing through the gate, forklifts humming, lights flickering on inside the main bay. The world kept turning, oblivious to what was coming. I sipped my coffee, black and bitter, and waited for the clock to reach 8:17 a.m. Inside those walls, Ethan Cole was probably pacing the control room, talking too loud, pretending he had everything under control. Zach would be glued to a monitor, pretending he understood half of what he was looking at. Maria would be keeping her head down, pretending she hadn't seen me last night when I walked the corridors like a ghost. Everyone would be pretending something. Pretending always comes before collapse. At 8:17 exactly, the plant's hum shifted. I could hear it even from here, the faint, almost imperceptible dip in frequency that signaled a network-wide reboot. Then, the alarms began. Not the kind that scream danger, but the soft mechanical chime that means a system has found something it shouldn't have. Every screen in the control room flashed the same message. Unauthorized safety bypass detected. Federal compliance audit initiated. Inside, chaos bloomed. Sirens cut through the air, short and sharp, followed by the hiss of machinery winding down. The production line stopped mid-cycle, robotic arms freezing in awkward poses like caught criminals. I pictured Ethan leaning over a console, shouting at IT to fix it, his voice cracking when he realized the system wasn't listening to him anymore, because it was listening to me. Within minutes, hundreds of auto-generated emails began their journey from the plant's server to corporate headquarters. Every falsified report, every deleted safety log, every bypassed alarm was exposed, each one neatly time-stamped and signed under Ethan's personal login. Video feeds showed him ordering overrides, instructing operators to falsify readings. I didn't have to embellish anything. The truth was always enough. By 9 a.m., the first call from corporate hit his desk. By 10, the second. At 11:15, federal inspectors were on site. I watched the white government sedans roll through the security gate like sharks moving into bloodied water. Workers gathered in clusters outside, whispering, confused but curious. Zach came running out around noon, pale as a sheet. I could almost hear his voice through the glass. It wasn't me, I swear. Maria followed him out later, calm and deliberate, her hands in her pockets. She didn't look at the cameras, but she didn't need to. She knew exactly what was happening and who had started it. Ethan lasted until 3:42 p.m. That's when the inspectors walked him out of the main building. He wasn't yelling anymore. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, sweat darkening the fabric under his arms. Handcuffs caught the sunlight as they led him to a waiting vehicle. Charges would read like a spreadsheet of sins: fraud, safety violations, falsified records, environmental negligence. The company's PR department moved fast. By 5, A press release hit the wire. Phoenix Alloy Fabrication commends the anonymous whistleblower who exposed systemic misconduct. Anonymous. I liked that word. It felt clean. When the last of the workers had gone home and the sirens faded, I started the truck and drove toward the highway. The rearview mirror caught the plant's silhouette, shrinking behind me, steel skeleton against a pink horizon, stripped of all its illusions. At home, the garage was dim and quiet. I set my coffee mug on the workbench and powered up my old desktop. The folders glowed softly in the dark. Logs, copies, fail-safes. Proof that I'd seen what no one else cared to see. I highlighted them all, right-clicked, and selected Delete. The progress bar crawled across the screen until nothing remained but empty space. I leaned back in the chair and listened to the silence fill the room. Outside, the sun was setting, throwing long shadows through the blinds. The world felt balanced again, like a machine finally back in sync after years of strain. Every system has a shutdown sequence. I just followed protocol. I closed the garage door, and the light from the computer vanished, leaving only the hum of the cooling fan winding down a final exhale before quiet.